Section 3.3, Systems of Linear Equations in 3 Variables. So for this section, what we're going to do is look at problems where we have 3 equations and 3 variables. So instead of solving for just x and y, we now have to solve for x, y, and z. The steps that we're going to follow are: step 1, we want to pick 2 equations, any 2 equations, and eliminate one of the variables. Try to find the easiest 2 equations to work with. It looks like equation 1 and equation 2, where we just add the 2 equations, we can eliminate y. So that would be the easiest way to go. That's going to be step 1. It's a good idea to write out all your steps clearly, so that way if you make a mistake, you can always go back and check your work to see where you went wrong. So make sure when you're working on these that you just write out all your steps. Okay, so we do not have to multiply, we just add and we can eliminate y. This comes out to be 0. And we're going to be left with negative 5x plus 5z is equal to 10. What I'm going to do is look at this equation carefully, and I want to show you that we can actually make the numbers smaller. You can divide both sides of this equation by 5, and that's just going to make the equation easier to work with. Because we have negative 5, 5, and 10, I could divide everything through by 5, and we can get the following equation. Negative x plus z is equal to 2. You do not have to do this extra step of dividing, but I think it makes the equation easier to work with. So now at this point, I'm going to box this equation because we have to use it in the 3rd step. Step 2. I need to pick 2 more equations and eliminate the same exact variable, which in this case is y. Since I eliminated y for step 1, we have to eliminate y in the 2nd step. Pick 2 more equations to work with and eliminate y. So what we could do, or one way to do this, is you can pick equation 1 and equation 3 and use those 2 to eliminate y. So equation 1 and equation 3. Now in order to eliminate, we actually have to multiply the first equation by 2. So the first equation has to be multiplied by 2, and then I can eliminate y. So I'm going to go ahead and just write 2 here and multiply by 2. Bring down the 3rd equation. Make sure that all the like terms line up. We're going to add negative 2y plus 2y is 0. We are left with 3x minus z is equal to 2. Let's box this equation as well. So now let's go back, look at step 1 and step 2. Notice that we have two equations. This should be an x. Notice that we have two equations with the same two variables, x and z. So your third step is use these two equations and solve for x and solve for z. Step 3 is just solving a system of two equations, two variables, just like we did in section 3.1. So I'm going to put these two equations together, and it works out nicely. We don't have to multiply. We can just add the two equations, eliminate z, and we could solve for x. So first I will just recopy both equations. I can directly add, which is nice. Eliminate z. 2x is equal to 4. X is 2. I need to solve for z, and we just use one of these two equations. I'm just going to use the second equation. It doesn't matter. You could use the first. Subtract 6. Divide by -1 both sides. Z comes out to be 4. You need to find y. To find y, we actually need to go back to one of the equations that contains y, which would be any of these three. And you can choose whichever one you want. I will pick the first equation because that's the easier one. Plug in 2 and 4 and solve for y. So we're using equation 1. We have, so let's just call this step 4. Use equation 1. I will recopy it here and just plug in 2 and then 2 times 4 and just solve. Combine like terms. That's going to give us 10 minus y is equal to 3. Subtract 10. Divide by -1 on both sides. And we have our solution. You can write your answer as an ordered triple. 2, 7, 4. Has to be in the order x, y, and z. And you should probably make sure that your answer is correct. To check your answer, you have to take all three solutions and you need to substitute them into all three equations. You have to check all three equations. If it works for all three of them, then your answer is correct. If it does not work for all three, then your answer is wrong and you need to go back and figure out where you made a mistake. These problems require you to be very careful because one mistake with a negative sign or one multiplication or addition or division mistake will mess up everything. So that's why it's a good idea to write out everything that you're doing and be super clear and super neat. That way you can go back and figure out where you made a mistake if you did. But always write out all your steps because that's the best way to solve these.